Hi everyone, today we have a couple of Nintendo Switch joysticks that are experiencing drift, so we're going to go ahead and replace those with new Hall Effects joysticks. In order to replace those, you're going to need tri-point Y00 screwdriver, a Phillips 00 screwdriver, plastic spudger, a pick, and a pair of tweezers. Alright, let's go ahead and get started. Alright, first thing first, we're going to go ahead and take our tools. We're going to organize them at the top just so that we have them easily accessible. And we're going to take our left joystick. We're going to open using the Y00 head, and we're going to try to open it using the guitar pick. Gently pry once you have all of the screws open. Gently pry it up so that you don't rip those two ribbon cables. Then take your plastic spudger and disconnect the battery connector. Just be gentle. There are a couple of additional wires around the battery connector, so you want to be careful not to rip those apart. So do your best and just gently pry it upwards. And once it's disconnected, just take your pick and wedge it between the plastic and the battery and try to pry it up. There's glue tabs on both edges of the holder, so you'll want to just be gentle on that and just make sure that you don't bend the battery. Once you have the battery out, there are a couple of screws. There are 3 screws that you want to open them up, and once you have those 3, the battery holder will also slide to the right. So as you'll see in a bit, once I have those screws up, you want to be careful and just open that container to the right side, just like a book cover. Once you have those open, there are a couple of additional screws that you want to be careful of not opening them, which I did a mistake of, so as you can see, I screwed them back in. Once you have those screwed back in, you want to disconnect the ribbon cable that's connecting the battery container, and it connects the L1 and L2. So once you have those disconnected, you'll also disconnect the ribbon cable connecting the existing joysticks. So here you can see me disconnecting that ribbon cable for the existing joystick, and I also took out the screws, as you will see here. You can see me just trying to put that back again, the L1 right there. So here I am taking the screws off of the existing joystick, and once I have those out, I'm just going to gently pry it. There is some padding at the bottom that tends to hold the joystick from coming out, so you just want to be careful of that existing padding. You want to keep it in there. So here I am looking and comparing with the new Hall Effect joystick, and once I have that, I'm gonna gently place it into its place and be mindful of those existing cables, not to crush them because they can easily be ripped. So you want to make sure you move them aside once you place your new joystick in. Once you have that in, just screw back the 2 screws that are connecting on the either side of the joystick, and then start to route your ribbon cables. Here I'm trying to put back the L1, I believe, which came out along with the spring. So next to the button that clicks, there is a spring that pushes the L1 button back out so that it doesn't get stuck in, and that spring kept getting loose. So here I'm trying to put back in. Just be mindful of that. There is a sort of a spoke that points out, and you want to make sure that the the spring, it goes around that, and there's a column, sort of a column that is part of the button itself. So the spring goes on top of that column. So here I am trying to put the ribbon back in. It is a little bit sturdy on the edge where the ribbon goes into the connector. However, I was not getting a good of a grip using my tweezers. So it just my tweezers kept sliding on the ribbon. So it was a little bit difficult, but I eventually got it to slide in using my finger to push it in, and then once I had that in, I made sure to close the ribbon connector so that it doesn't come loose. As you can see, I'm still struggling with it. There is going to be a little bit of struggle, not only with this ribbon but all of the other ribbons. Some of them going to be fairly easily able to slide in, but others it's a little bit of a difficult play, so you have to make sure to give it enough of a push so that it slides all the way in without ripping it up, and that was my biggest concern. So here you can see that I'm still struggling with the second connector, which connects the, I believe that's the L2 piece. So once I had that in, now the next ribbon that is going to go in is the battery, part of the battery container, which holds the L1 piece. So here you can see me, I'm trying to connect that ribbon that's part of the battery container. Once that ribbon goes in, you're able to take the battery container and screw it back in using the 3 screws that you took out. So here, take your time putting the ribbon back in. Make sure you don't rip the ribbon, because they can easily be ripped up, and once those are ripped, you're gonna have to either get a new ribbon or potentially get a new controller altogether. So here you can see me, I'm still struggling with the L1 button that has a spring next to the clicking button. It would just not go into that groove, and it kept popping out. So I had a very hard time just making sure that spring stays on top of the column that's part of the button, while also going into the groove that is part of the blue container. So here I finally managed to get it in place. Now I'm adding the battery holder along with the L2 button, and I have the 3 screws that hold that place. So I go ahead and place them back along with the battery. Make sure it's in the correct orientation. And once you have that in place, press it down so that it makes connection with the glue pads, and then connect the battery connector back into its place. Once you have that, then you're all set to button this thing up. Go ahead and take those 4 screws, the black screws, using the tri-point Y00 driver, and go ahead and screw them back again. So once then, you can move on to the next one. So this right controller is a little bit different, although the outside you still have the 4 screws, and you can, once you have them open using the tri-point driver, the internals are a little bit different from the left one, so you want to be careful of that. So again, using the guitar pick, you can just go ahead and easily pry it open. Just be careful of those 2 ribbons. Don't rip them up. So you want to gently open that. Once you have that open, take the guitar pick again and wedge it between the battery and the container. Take the battery out, and before you take the battery out, of course, you want to disconnect the cable. So you make sure that you use something that's plastic, not a metal piece. So take the battery container out, then using the guitar pick, take the battery out from this container. And then for this container, the difference is that it has a radio antenna, which I just took it out there. So it's the connector is very close to the battery connector, so you want to make sure that you use a spudger to pry that out as well. So once you have it out, place it on the side, and then start to take 3 screws out that are holding the battery container in. Similar to the other controller, you have the another ribbon that connects the R2 button to the main board. So here I made a mistake of disconnecting it, and you'll see why in a bit. The reason why you probably don't want to disconnect it and just move it on the side like a page cover is that it is very difficult to put that small ribbon back into its place. There is not a lot of room, unlike the other ribbons. So once you start to put these things back together, it's very difficult to put it back in. So now take the new joystick, put it back in. I'm not going to screw it first. I'm going to put the ribbon back into its connector so that I have enough of a room if I need to wiggle it around and move the joystick just enough so that there is enough of play to get that ribbon back into its connector. If I screw that in first, there might not be enough room in the ribbon for me to be able to do that. So here you can see me trying to work that ribbon into its connector. It is very difficult, but you just have to be patient, just work with it and make sure you don't rip that cable. So once you have the cable inserted and close the clasp, you want to put the screws back in to hold that joystick in. And once you have that in, take the battery holder and make sure that if you took the R1 off, you take the spring, insert that into its place, and then put in the R1 button on. So here you can see me play around with it for a little bit, and I'm trying to press the spring into its place before I put on top of it the battery holder. So here you can see me, and you'll see me for a while working with this one ribbon for a long time, just trying to get it into its connector. And because there is not enough length on that ribbon, this was the mistake that I made that I would advise you guys not to do. If you can leave that ribbon in, just swing that battery container to the side and just work with the what room you have, and take the old joystick out and put that back in. If you have to remove that ribbon, just know that it will be a little bit of difficult and quite a while before you can get that ribbon back into its place. For me, the tweezers kept sliding off, and I wasn't able to get enough of a grip on it. And eventually, once I did, and I was able to slide it into its connector, I closed the clasp on it and finally was able to go on to the next step. But here you can see me struggling with it for quite a long time. So here finally it looks like I was able to put that ribbon back in and close the clasp, and now I am trying to screw the battery container back into its place using the 3 screws. And where I am working right now, because of that big magnet, the screws kept getting attracted to the magnet, so I had to use the tweezer to make it go back into its place and then screw it back in. Then before I move on to the battery, I made sure to connect the antenna, route the cable into its place, It's a very specific place. The cable remembers sort of the path it took, so you just take that same shape, put it back into its place. Just make sure that it is not in the way of the battery when you put the battery in. And connect the antenna first before you start working with the battery connector. Again, use the plastic spudger to put the battery, and don't use a metal piece. So once you have the battery in its place, you want to quickly move on to the next step, which is to take the back shell and put it back into its place, just keeping in mind that you don't sandwich the cables into the two shells of the cover. So once you have those out of the way, close the shell back up and screw back in the 4 tri-point screws that we took out. So here you can see I have replaced both of those connectors, and now I'm going to calibrate the joysticks using the Nintendo Switch. So if you turn on the Nintendo Switch, you're going to have to go to the settings menu. You go ahead and click on the settings button, go down to the I believe it's called the controller and sensors, and you're gonna have to go down further where it says calibrate controller, and here you'll see that I am first calibrating the right joystick and then the left one. So here the center is right in the middle of the crosshair, but I want to go ahead and recalibrate it just to make sure that it works perfectly. So here you'll see me try to recalibrate it. So you go ahead and select OK on this, and it will ask you to follow certain steps. So here, an anomaly, I'm not sure why this happened, but for some reason the joysticks weren't centering properly, so I had to go back and forth a couple of times to get that to center properly. So once it centers, you go ahead and complete the step to recalibrate this joystick. And here you can see that the center of the joystick is on the center of the crosshair. So here I'm just trying to make sure that the previous settings that I had, I just wanted to be sure that this drift that I'm seeing now, it doesn't get carried over once the sensor is calibrated. So I'm recalibrating it just to make sure that it works. So once it's calibrated, it looks like the sensor is working properly. So now I'm going to move on to the left joystick, and here again you can see that there seems to be a little bit of drift. I'm not sure why that happens, but I'm going to go ahead and calibrate it again, and here you can see me that once I follow the steps, the pointer still points away from the center. Not sure why, but once it's calibrated and we go back, we get this message and we go back to this screen, it looks like that the center is always on the center of the crosshair. Alright guys, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.